They told us we were lazy, lost.
Millennials had it bad. Generation Z may have it worse.
We're not walking away. We're running toward the cross.
Revival has been breaking out on college campuses across America.
Revival. Jesus, they never walk alone, and they never stop, and they never stay silent.
So Ryan, you ready, man? First episode.
Sir. And I first want to just thank you, though, for allowing me to come on to this as the first guest. It's an honor. But, you know, I kind of want to make the purpose known of why this is being done. And it's not being done for my glory or for Hayden's glory or for any of the other guests' glory, but all to give glory to God. You know, and that's sort of showing what God has done in our lives and showing what he's done in other people's lives, and just understanding that, hey, none of this could have come from me. It all came from God. You know, it was all planned to happen this way, and what happened is being worked out for my good, even if it was terrible. So just want to start with that, but thank you so much for having me on here. It truly is an honor. So we can start.
Absolutely, man. That's why I think you're the perfect first guest. I mean, just humble, full of wisdom, and that's why I'm excited, man. I remember middle school. We're going to definitely dive into this. I don't want to go too far into it, but you were a hooligan in middle school, and then you changed. And I haven't heard your story yet. I actually told you to keep it a surprise for me because I want to hear it for the first time right here, right now. So, Ryan Aycock, this is going to be the famous question of the podcast. What is your testimony?
All right, so, you know, I'd always kind of grown up in church, as a lot of people in the South have, you know, Bible Belt. So I actually grew up going to this church originally, probably until I was around 6 years old or so, and then we moved over down to Faith Community Fellowship. And, you know, I'd always grown up with Christian parents. You know, I had went to the little Bible school that they had for all the youngins who couldn't go to the adult service. So I had done all of that, but, you know, I had never really understood truly what the gospel is and how to receive Christ until realistically around ninth-ish grade. So, you know, around the start of ninth grade is when I really understood that truth. But I first, before we get to sort of that understanding that I had about what the gospel was, we first have to dive into what was before that, right? So, you know, I would say I'd always been a pretty good kid in elementary school, but I think what really changed for me was going into middle school. You know, it was really like this snap. From 5th grade to 6th grade, where you kind of saw it, kids felt a lot more in control, in a sense. Like, at 5th grade, I never heard anybody cuss, right? I never heard anybody say something like that, but as soon as 6th grade rolled around, you know, we thought, and this is just collectively, we all thought that we kind of ran the place. You know, 6th grade was the first year where I started seeing people fight in school, right? 6th grade was the first year when I started hearing some cuss words I never heard before. So, you know, I naturally started to adopt kind of the behavior that my peers were having. So, you know, 6th grade started to kind of go down that trail of hanging around the wrong crowd. 7th grade especially, you know, I started getting more trouble in school. And then we get to 8th grade. And 8th grade really is the turning point for me. So it's a pretty crazy story, but me and some guys who were a grade below me, 7th grade, obviously I'm not going to name them, but we were on the bus. And, you know, you had mentioned before we did this, you know, I remember you mentioning that, one, you didn't want me to tell you it and keep it a surprise, but also that I kind of just disappeared for a while, you know. And this is why. So we were on the bus, though, and we were really bored. Now, thankfully, we didn't do what we were planning on doing, because I might have not ended up in alternative school. I might have ended up in juvie. But, you know, I still can't wrap my mind around why we thought to do this, but
Kids.
yeah, kids, you
Young.
know.
We're still kids. Younger.
Yes, younger kids, less mature.
Testosterone.
Yes, very much kind of dominance based. But we had this kid who we didn't like very much, you know, and it kind of was bully attitude. So AI voice was starting to come around, and we were like, okay, let's put his name and then do a thread on AI voice. So we did that, and we were calling a bunch of places, and you know, we called McDonald's, some Planet Fitness, and some random state, and we actually, thank God we didn't do this, because as I said, I might have ended up somewhere else besides alternative school if this was the
You're going to
case.
call a police station.
Not the police station, but thankfully not. But also thankfully not for this one. We were thinking about doing that to the school. And if we did that, and, you know, in our mind, 8th graders, you know, we just, like, it's just a prank. You know, it's just a prank call. But we thought about doing that at school. And, you know, we thought that we would never get caught for calling these establishments and telling them threats. And one day, I'm in gym class. One of the guys that called him with me was in there as well. And the coaches, they call us over there, and they're like, go see Mr. Scott. And we kind of had an idea of what's going to go down, but we didn't know sort of the severity of this. So we end up going to Mr. Scott's office, and we see 2 police officers. And that kind of set in my mind, crap. Like this, yeah, I screwed up big time. So we're sitting there, and they made us go in a different room, and we're talking to each other, and we're like, dude, we screwed up. Like, we didn't know what was going to happen to us. You know, seeing 2 police officers as an 8th grader in a room, you're thinking, I'm going to go to jail. And, you know, if we weren't minors, we definitely would have. You know, it was some, I think they said it was like a Class C felony, terroristic threats. And, you know, hearing felony as a kid, you know, I kind of tried to laugh it off, you know, as most kids do when they get in trouble. Oh, it's, you know, it's funny, you know. But luckily, I don't think that they put that on my record. I hope they didn't. But I don't think that they ended up doing it. But they were telling us, hey, this is what you would have got. You would have got Class C felony making terroristic threats. So they ended up telling us, though, that we were going to have to spend 3 months in the alternative school. And that was a nightmare. You did your work, ate your lunch, and then stared at a wall the whole time. They let us walk around outside occasionally, but besides that, super strict, couldn't really do much. So, you know, and I was pretty social. So for me, that was terrible. But anyways, what I actually find so just amazing about God's grace, and not only that, but a mother's unconditional love, was that entire time when I had done that. You know, of course, my dad was really angry at me. My mom was angry too, but my mom showed more grace, right? Although she was upset, she showed that unconditional love to me, and that really touched me. But not only that, after the fact, when I actually ended up receiving Christ, when I actually ended up giving my life to Christ, she told me that she was praying for me the entire time. while I was in alternative school, and even before that, because she knew that the people that I was hanging around was bad. And another thing, I forgot to mention this, but the day that I did all those calls, she had sent me a message telling me to act good on the bus. And I just read that message. I was like, I don't have to listen to that. And because of my disobedience, it brought me there.
I want to butt in. Do you think in any way, I mean, just imagine if that prank had been done off of a school bus. Like, I think it being done on a school bus and with school grounds was one of the major reasons the cops then put it on a record and see. Thankfully, it happened in school and they could punish you through school. There's no telling what would have happened if that would have been a prank that y'all did on a sleepover one night in one of y'all's houses.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have tracked IP or something to a house. Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we probably would have gotten swatted, or we definitely wouldn't have. I would say the punishment that we got was definitely a slap on the wrist compared to, as you said, if we were outside of a school setting. It would have been a lot more serious. But, you know, when I tell people this, you know, what happened, they oftentimes are like, oh, don't you regret that? Now, at the time I did, but looking back on it, I think that sort of wake-up call was the best thing that ever happened to me. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand why I think that. But if that didn't happen, all the people that I have talked to about Christ, that I have planted seeds in, just everything that God has done through me would have not happened. So, you know, and just the Christian life is such a blessing. You know, it's not always going to be easy. You know, Christ never promised an easy life, but when you are following Christ, it is such a relief from all of the worldly things. But, you know, anyways, you know, my mother had been praying for me the entire time, and she had encouraged me after I got out of it to end up going to Wednesday night church. And for me, ever since I was young, I never wanted to go to Wednesday night church. Ever since elementary, you know, start of middle, end of middle, and I was starting in ninth now. I had never wanted to, and I think primarily when I was younger, elementary school age, I think the big reason why was because a lot of people were mean to me. So I didn't really want to be in a space where I could be made fun of or could be hurt. And then around middle school, I just didn't want to go, you know, because of that fear that was in my childhood. I just didn't want to go. Now, what's interesting is I had told my mom for the first time, okay, I'll go. I'll go to the Wednesday night church. I'll give it a try. And Satan tried to stop that. You know, I told her that the night before, and then the day of Wednesday, I'd went to school, and I had a really terrible day. Like, I'd been treated bad, I made terrible grades, and my parents are very strict about grades. So for me, that was, like, detrimental. And I got in the car, and I was literally crying. And I was like, I'm not going anymore. I don't feel like it. I don't want to. And she told me, and I truly think that this came from the Lord. She told me, you need to go. They're going to have a message for you. And they did have a message for me. It was a message about repentance. And not only that, after the message was done, they told us to spread apart for worship by ourselves. And I'm just sitting there, and I am going to name this person, Lawson Mack, walked up to me. Yes, absolutely love him. He walked up to me.
Need to have him on here at some point.
Yes, for sure. He walked up to me, and, you know, this is another thing where this only could have come from the Lord. I don't think that I visibly looked sad. I don't think that I visibly looked in distress. But he walks up to me and he's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And that really touched me. And I told him, I'm all right at first. And then he asked me again, and I went into detail a little. I had a bad day at school. People weren't too nice to me. I made bad grades. And I think also maybe the reason why he came up to me is, like you, he was probably wondering, where did this guy go? Because I had gotten in trouble literally the last 3 months of school. So completely disappeared to a lot of people's minds. And, he probably just wanted to check up on me. But him doing that really kind of ignited that spark in me a little. And I got in the car. I was so happy. I told my mom, I can't wait till next Wednesday. I'm going back next Wednesday, all of that. So, I praise God that he used Lawson Mack in that way and my mother in that way to encourage me to continue coming back. And that right there is really what sort of lit that spark under me.
That's deep. I mean, waiting to hear your testimony and wanting to be a surprise, like a part of me was like, hey man, his testimony could have just been, one day just slowly found God and then it happened. But that testimony speaks so much volumes to this generation, because that was one thing I wanted to butt in on when you speak about Wednesday Church, about being treated wrongly. That's something that needs to be addressed in this generation and in churches around here, because I feel the exact same way. It's not right. It's that everyone's clicked up. They've got their little groups they want to hang out with, and they don't want to let anyone new in. They don't want to go talk to new people. Like, if you are at church and you see a kid sitting across the room by himself, go talk to him, find out his name, introduce yourself, because you never know how big of an impact that can have on someone's life. And Lawson, man, like, I didn't know Lawson was a part of your testimony, and that's incredible. Like, that is the fact, and how you were talking about, like, I didn't think my face showed emotions or showed that I was angry or in a bad mood. But one thing that I can tell you, especially through my testimony and what I've been through, is that I can spot it in someone, like it's just radiating off them. You can see it.
Yes.
And you can feel it, and you just know God's calling you to go talk to that person. And there's times where I feel horrible of, like, God's called me to talk to someone in public, and I've been nervous. Like, when I was really early in my journey, I was nervous, and I didn't go talk to him. And I'm like, and I still think to this day, like, what if I would have went and talked to him? You never know where it could have led. I had at the gym the other day, like, there's a lot that's been going on the past few weeks, business-wise, that's been stressing me out. I, unfortunately, have been told, hey, just be a kid, just relax, don't worry about all this stuff, and I can't. And it frustrates me. As hard as I try, I can't. And I remember I was at the gym this one day, and it was just overwhelming. And I was sitting there just in a bad mood, angry, and all of a sudden, it was like God put on my heart, he's like, go tell the gospel to someone here. And I was like at the gym, like, I see these people every single day. Like, that's going to be awkward if it doesn't go well. And I remember just sitting there thinking and imagining. I'm the type of person, I'll imagine a conversation. Yeah. And I just imagine myself going up and talking to someone and be like, hey, I just want to ask you a simple question. Like, do you have a personal relationship with God? And I just imagine myself going and talking, having a conversation with someone, and just that filled me with peace. Of it, kind of like when you say it, it reminds you of it. Like, when you tell someone, like, God loves you, God will take your burdens off of you, it reminds you of that. Like, hey, I'm going through this, he'll take these burdens off of me. And eventually I was like, all right, there's this guy behind this, on this bench behind me, I'm gonna go talk to him. So I walked up and I did my little awkward, taking my earbud out, and then he's like reaching down his bag, and I kind of like waved my hand in front. I hate doing that, but sometimes I gotta get people's attention. So he looks up, and there's this big old like jack dude in here. What you'll learn in the gym, the big old jack dudes are the nicest dudes. They're always just full of joy and just nice. And I was like, hey man, like, I just feel inclined to ask you, do you have a personal relationship with God? And normally when I go to talk to people, I'm a very jittery, chatty, like, hey man, I just want to tell you the good news of the gospel. Not this time, man. Like, I was so overwhelmed and just stressed out that I was like, man, I don't care. Like, I just want to ask you one simple, deep question. Do you have a personal relationship with God? And this guy, without a skip of a beat, was like, yeah. And I was like, man, what church do you go to? And I was trying to have a conversation with him. He said Rock City, some church in Birmingham, which, by the way, thank you so much to First Baptist for this space. This church and this chapel space that we're in right now, you can't see behind. There were some massive renovations that happened in this room last year, and it is magnificent.
Very, very beautiful.
Yes.
I also want to give a thanks to First Baptist. This is wonderful that you're letting us do this.
Yes. This podcast, one of the big issues we had in planning this podcast was a space, a studio space. And this came up with the help of some friends, help of Henry. I don't know if any of y'all know him, Henry Huffsteller. He led us in the church one day. He was walking us around to try to find a space, and this space, immediately when we walked in the door, I was like, this is it. So, yeah. But anyway, back to that. I mean, I was talking to him, and I was just telling him, like, man, like, what was your testimony? What was some things that you did? Because he was an older guy. I was like, well, what were some things that, like, went into your story? And he's like, man, I had a rough past. Like, and he just went deep into it. And I was like, dude, and I told him, I was like, man, things are so overwhelming right now. And I feel like that was a major reason God put it on my heart to come talk to you. And he looked me in the eye, and he gave me a piece of advice that I'd heard so many times before, but like this time, it meant so much more when someone looks you in the eye and they say it. He's like, just take it one day at a time. He's like, just wake up the next morning, make breakfast, eat it, go to school, do your work, and just rinse and repeat. Take it one day at a time. Pray, read your Bible, have a discipline and obedience with God. And I remember God told me something in prayer. I can't say too many specifics about the business side of everything because I don't want to cause issues with politics and all that crap and everything. But I can say this. He told me not to send emails to these people. He's like, don't send emails to those people. You've already sent emails to these people. Let me work my magic. And I was like, all right, I trust you. Like, as hard as it is, I trust you. And things are on the way. Like, this was the last week. And I was like, man, if it doesn't happen by this Friday, like, yeah. It stressed me. It stressed me out so much. And things, thankfully, nowadays, or now, ended up working out. And it's like, God, like, you're right. If I would have sent those emails to those people, I probably would have stirred up some dust that would have ruined everything. But this guy looked me straight in the eye, and he told me, take it one day at a time. And I was like, man, like, sometimes God doesn't put it on your heart to go talk to someone because you're supposed to spread the gospel to them. Sometimes he puts it on your heart to go talk to someone because they're going to spread the gospel to you.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And, you know, I think in the Christian walk, too, it's kind of take it one day at a time. You know, a lot of new believers, and something that I tried to do at the start was, you know, try to overload myself with countless things and tried to pray for like 30 minutes to an hour as a new believer, tried to read the Bible for like an hour. And, you know, as a new believer, your stomach's not that big yet. You know, you're still, as the Bible will call you, a baby in the faith. And, you know, babies have a very small stomach, and they can only drink milk. So that's kind of an encouragement for the viewers as well. You know, your age in the faith, your maturity in the faith is going to determine how much you can take in. So please don't get discouraged if you see other people talking about theology or stuff that may go way over your head right now. You can't take that in right now. And I'm not saying that out of pride or out of ego, but I'm saying that because that was something that really bothered me at the start of my walk.
And that's one thing, too, that you see a lot nowadays in social media of, like, people are, and this is another thing about Gen Z. Like, you could tell Gen Z's on fire for it, because you're on TikTok, too. I know a lot of like, strong Christian men who aren't on social media, and I 100% understand it, but I've grown up on it. I like to say I have forged my For You page in steel. Like, if a video shows up that I don't need to be seeing, I hold down, not interested. It won't ever show up again.
Same thing with me.
But, so you know how it is. And, I mean, these videos will show up with these people talking about the Bible, and it's like you go to these comment sections, and even videos, too. They'll be like, what are some tips to, like, understand the Bible better? And you'll go to the comment section, and people are like, well, you know, just pray to God for understanding. And to an extent, that's an awesome piece of advice. But another thing is, if you've only been reading the Bible for a week, you got all these kids out here that have been reading for a week or two, and they're praying like, yo, God, give me understanding all this. And they're not understanding some of the scriptures, and they get dismotivated. They get discouraged. Yes. And it's like, you can't get discouraged. Like, the Bible is such a, I'm going to say this, the Bible is a complicated book. It just is. Now, when you start studying and diving into the Bible and you really start looking deep into some scriptures and breaking it down verse by verse, you start to realize that every verse has so many different meanings to it that you can interpret it. So you can either interpret it as love, you can either interpret it as God, as tough love, as obedience. There's so many different ways that you can interpret it, and that's why it's important to have smart people in your life that are very full of wisdom and that understand the Bible and some of its scriptures, because that can help you a long way. But do not expect within a couple weeks of reading the Bible that you're going to be a theologian and that you're going to have every verse memorized and that you're going to know the book. I've been reading for over a year now, and I still don't. We were talking about that before, man. Like, I can tell you kind of an area in a book that something is, like, oh, it's at the end of Luke. It says something like this. But I'm not to the point where I can give you verse by verse the numbers and everything, because, man, it takes time, and it takes there's people that are just smart, man. Henry, y'all are your brains, man.
Henry is
he's going to be on this show too.
Yeah, Henry is beyond smart for his age. I mean, it's crazy to me. And I did want to kind of share a quote too from an early church father, Saint Jerome. And this is kind of a paraphrase here, but he said that the Bible and that Scripture is shallow enough that a babe in the faith can come and drink from it. But it's also deep enough that a theologian can jump in and swim and never touch the bottom. So that's sort of what we've been talking about here is, you know, even though you may want to dive into all the kind of mechanics behind it, and I've dove into some of the mechanics behind it. There's thousands of other stuff that you have to look at, and that kind of goes into where you're never going to touch bottom. You know, there is so many different, like he said, interpretations. There's so many different cross-references you have to look at. So don't get discouraged by that. You know, there is enough that a baby in the faith, a baby believer, can come and get their daily needs met, be nourished. Simple stuff like the gospel, you know, the resurrection of Christ, the deity of Christ. Those are simple things that can nourish you. And then, you know, once you've learned those, understood those, you build on top of that and then build on, you know. So that is a word of encouragement, though, because definitely early on in my testimony, that was something that, you know, I saw the Henrys and I saw the theologians, and I was like, I want that. But, you know, I couldn't understand what they were talking about. They were saying stuff that sounded like hieroglyphics to me.
On that note, I got a question. Controversial question, and I think this would be a great topic of conversation because some people do want to know. What is your favorite or recommended versions of the Bible? Because we got English Standard Version, we got King James Version, which, by the way, if you read King James Version, you're a menace. I mean, that is another level. I don't think I've gone past, what's it? It's like one step above ESV. Is it?
Like ultra literal?
Yes, because there's a difference between, so there is like word for word translation and there's thought for thought translation. Like ESV is where it starts getting to word for word. CSB is like thought for thought.
Yeah.
But I want to say there's one under King James Version that's like, it's not so much word for word, but it can be complicated.
So, you know, I guess sort of how I would rank it on word to word or word for word, I would say ESV is probably going to be one of the, it's definitely in the word for word category, but it's kind of more, it's definitely easier English to understand. And then you definitely have the New King James and King James up there. You know, New King James, obviously a little bit more easier to understand. You know, you don't have all the hath, thou, thee.
Yeah.
So
you don't feel like you're in a castle.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're a knight. So, and then, you know, what I would say are the top dogs of literal. are NASB 1995. Do not pick up the 2020 version. It's not good. Get the 1995 if you want a very literal, or get the LSB, which is what Henry reads.
That may have been what it was.
Yes.
I was thinking of.
That one is more literal than the NASB. I use the NASB 95, and I've kind of been reluctant to switch to the LSB because, I've always read the NASB, so it's kind of like I don't really want to switch. But, also, though, that kind of goes into your maturity level, though. I don't think that I would recommend diving into NASB because it can be confusing at times, or I definitely don't recommend diving in the King James Version. You're going to get lost very quick. You're going to be looking
telling
up
me
words.
new Christians that are weakened in their faith shouldn't read the King James Version?
For sure not. And I usually don't recommend this for more mature Christians, but for the younger Christians in their faith that are still learning a lot, I would recommend the NIV. I would recommend the CSB. I would recommend those easier to grasp translations that are still going to get the truth of God to you while not compromising on it.
And I have actually, the first time I read through the Bible, I read an ESV, just like a regular Bible. It wasn't a study Bible. It was a regular Bible. And I honestly think, I don't know, because I know some people say, like, when it's your first time reading the Bible, get a study Bible. To me, I don't know what I would like better. Because reading just the ESV, like when I first started reading the Bible, it was a discipline thing of like, I need to read a chapter a day, at least a chapter a day, and build that discipline, and it worked amazing. I built the discipline in it, and I ended up getting through it in about a year. And then I got a study Bible. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to start diving a little deeper into it. But honestly, man, I think that's a controversial topic of like, should new readers read a regular ESV or whatever version, or should they go straight into a study Bible? Because I think some people can get overwhelmed with a study Bible of like, man, I got to read the scripture and then I got to read the study notes at the bottom. But I think it just depends on, like you said, maturity level. Like if you read a lot and you're good at studying, then I'd go to the study Bible. Yeah. But if you don't read a lot and you just want to build the discipline, I'd go for a regular ESV or a regular Bible.
Yeah, for sure. The study Bible is definitely for a new Christian. They do have some benefits, but they also do have cons, like he was saying. You could kind of get burnout really quick of reading a verse and then looking down and seeing a long explanation, reading all of that, and maybe all of it just slips over your head. So I think there's definitely some benefits to a study Bible, like the cross-reference section and the concordance in the back if you want a specific verse. But besides that, I think that most new Christians should probably stick to, as you said, just a regular, ESV or NIV, something of that.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question about, go back to the testimony of your story, because I think this is something that honestly takes some thought. Like, I think more people, even after they've been saved, should really think about this, and they're probably still going through it. Heck, I did after I got saved for months. What was the hardest thing, and I hate using the word overcome, so I'm never really going to use the word overcome, but what were some of the hardest things you had to fight or flee from in your journey?
Oh, yeah, so for me, I think some of the more easier things sins that I gave up really quick. Was cussing. That was kind of one that for some reason for me, and it may not be that way for others, and that's kind of what I've realized is it's interesting because we've all got what seems to be specific sin trends, and it's kind of instead of drug of choice, it's sin of choice. So for me, it was super easy to drop cussing, and another thing was secular music. Now, some of the hardest things that, for me to drop and that still can be a struggle if you let it, is stuff like lust. Stuff like pride, which pride really, especially as a man, I feel like it's so much easier to slip into pride and ego when you've got testosterone, and when you're a man, you always kind of have that competition mindset. Like, I have to be better than this person. I have to be better than this person. But, in reality, you're all at your own pace, and you have to stay humble. That's another one. Being humble was very, very hard for me. And it still can be difficult. But yeah, overall, some of the hardest things that I think a lot of Christian men are still fighting after they're saved, and even when they were saved, some of the hardest struggles were lust, pride, and not being humble, not having humility. So that, I would definitely say, can still be a struggle for me, and was definitely a struggle when you're a baby believer. And that's another thing for the viewers, something that really tore me down in a sense was when I would have these relapses of sin, and when I would repent of something and tell God, hey, I'm never going to do this again. Come on. I ended up doing it again. So that's something. Definitely never make a promise to God that you're not going to commit this sin again, because it really tears you down when you make that and then you end up committing it again. It puts you in a spot that's very, very rough. So definitely, a lot of young men struggle with lust. Give it to God in prayer. Pray that God would not lead you into temptation, but deliver you from evil. Kind of that Lord's Prayer attitude. So give it to God. Read the Word. Paul said it in 1 Corinthians 6, flee, run. Not entertain it some and then
Kill it.
Yeah, kill it. Gone. Out of there. So, that's definitely what I would give advice for, is don't let it fester. Don't let it sit there in your mind and just, because let me tell you, if you let it sit there in your mind for long enough, your flesh is weak. It's going to end up, succumbing to that. So, the flesh is weak, the spirit is willing. Give it to God in prayer. And I'm telling you, if you are relying on the Spirit, you're going to overcome it. So, for me, definitely, those have been the struggles. They've been a struggle ever since I got saved. They still can come back in cycles and just really destroy me in a sense. And you have to rely on God when these storms and trials come. Look at Peter. Peter took his eyes off Christ, and he immediately knew, hey, I screwed up. I'm sinking now. And that's kind of the idea too. As soon as you take your eyes off God and say, I'm going to fight this sin on my own, you're going to sink in that sin, and you're going to have to cry out, Christ, save me.
And that's why I think humility and pride is a big thing. Of if you're too prideful to admit that, hey, I screwed up and I can't do this by myself. That was one thing that I regret about my testimony. And to an extent, I regret it, but it's the same way of how you talked about, if I hadn't went through that, I would be where I am now. Is when I went through my testimony, man, it was stupid that I didn't tell anyone what I was dealing with. I didn't talk to anyone. Addictions that I was dealing with, I dealt with them by myself, and I'm going to fix them by myself. Now, when I really look back, did I fix them by myself? No. Me and God worked as a team to fix those. So there's no way I could have done it solely by myself. But I didn't have the humility. I had pride of I'm strong enough to deal with this. And to an extent, it made me stronger. Of I've been through this stuff. I can talk to someone and I know what they're going through and what they're feeling, and I can help them through that. But if I would have just talked to someone, I probably could have gotten through it so much easier. And I probably could have overcome or fled from that sin so much quicker. But I love how you talked about humility was a hard thing, because, man, humility in the world we live in today with social media and everything, everyone wants to fake a perfect life out there.
Yes.
And being humble, it's a big deal, man. And it's hard to do. Same
yeah.
thing. I mean, that's what we were talking about when I came in here. Remember, I was talking about, I can't name an exact verse, but I can say about where it is. Right in the end of Luke, when it talks about the humble will be exalted and the exalters will be humbled. I mean, that's part of it, man. Like, keep yourself humble and it'll pay off.
Oh, yeah. Well, and as he was saying, the Bible offers great wisdom. And, there's a proverb, I believe it's in chapter 16, but it talks about how pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before stumbling. So, he saw it firsthand. He kind of had the idea of, I'm man enough, I can solve this on my own. And he ended up being destroyed after. And it's kind of the same way with how I've tried to handle stuff. I've had that idea of, I can handle this on my own. I can fight the temptation on my own. I don't need God to assist me. And what ended up happening? Destruction. So, always take it to God. Don't ever try to fight on your own. As St. Paul said, flee. Don't sit there and let it fester. Flee.
And reaching out, man. Reaching out to friends, too. Like, when you're going through something, reach out to a friend. I don't care if I don't talk to you on a daily basis. I don't care if we ended off on a bad foot last time we talked. If you're going through something and you text me, like, I'm going to be there. And sometimes, we talked about it in the small group one time, of like, sometimes I don't even have to say anything. Just listen. Someone rambling on the phone about some stuff they're going through, let them talk. Let them say what they're dealing with, and at the end, just be like, hey, like right now, I don't know how I can help you, but I appreciate you talking, and I'm here for you. Like, sometimes, man, that's all it takes. It's just let people know that they can talk to you, and they can tell you what they're dealing with, because everyone is dealing with something. Even Pastor Buddy. The pastor here, on the outside, man, he could look like he's perfect. Everyone's dealing with struggles. Everyone's dealing with something, whether it be in their faith, whether it be in their family life, whether it be in their personal lives. Everyone has something they're dealing with. And that's why it just goes back to being kind to people. Like, when you're at Wednesday church and you see someone across the room by themselves, go talk to them, because you never know what they're going through. It could change someone's life. Just showing kindness to people. And at the start, it may be willpower. Like, I'm going to be honest with me, sometimes it's just willpower. Sometimes I'm going up to be nice to someone, and I may be tired and exhausted and in a bad mood, but I'm going to force myself to do it. But what happens over time is that you start to find joy and seeing joy in other people, and that's just contagious, man. That love that overflows is contagious. And I'm not perfect at it, man. There's days when I'm tired, when that business stuff can get stressful and it can get over my head, and I go back to kind of who I was before, where I'm just empty. And, man, it can be a dark place. And that's what, now it's not so much empty and sad. Now it's just frustrating. Like, why the heck am I right here? Like, why am I in this spot? And it's because I'm stressed. It's because things get overwhelming, and that's when prayer is absolutely vital. Like, God, man, I just need to have trust and faith in you, because I'm about to punch a hole in a wall.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Christ did in Gethsemane. He was going through some immense pain and stress of what he was about to go through. And, it describes the stress as sweating blood. So,
which, by the way, can actually happen. When I was first reading the Bible, I thought that was just like a supernatural biblical thing. No, you can actually sweat blood.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's real. It can happen. I have never seen it happen. I have never heard of someone in person of it happening to, but it can, like POW. Like, some POW soldiers sweat blood. It's real. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's something interesting, and that's kind of goes into how you've never learned it all. I just learned something new, that sweating blood.
I just taught Ryan Aycock something.
Yeah, I thought it was always a metaphor.
No, man. It can happen.
Wow, okay. So, and I'm sure it's caused from immense stress. So he's sitting there, though, in Gethsemane. And like you were saying, during those times when you're having this stress and this immense pain of trying to do it on your own, Jesus is the perfect example of what to do. He didn't sit there and try to say, oh,
Turn
well,
on some sad country music.
yeah, let me turn on some sad music, or let me find something to cope with. He ended up praying to the Father. And, you know, what he prayed was very powerful. He prayed, Father, and of course this isn't verbatim, but he prayed, basically, Father, if there's any other way, there's any other way that this can be done, that the sacrifice for sin can be done, please let it be that. But if not, let your will be done. And that, right there, the submission, the, hey, this is what I want, but at the end of the day, I know that what you want is better, so let your will be done. And, you know, I am so, so, so happy and joyful that my will throughout my life was not done. You know, if my will throughout my life was done, I don't know where I'd be. You know, and I think that's the thing for a lot of people. So, you know, you just have to have that mindset of Jesus as, hey, look, God, this is what I want. But at the end of the day, your will needs to be done, so let your will be done. But definitely, once again, going back to it, whenever you're in that immense stress or that immense just fear comes over you, go to God in prayer. Do what Jesus did. Get on your knees in prayer. Talk to the Lord. I promise you, it will make it better if you let it.
And I think those are the times, honestly, where, like, your faith can truly be strengthened. Is, like, I think that's what sets a child of God apart from a child of the devil. And this is a rabbit hole I could go down that I will not go down this episode. Because, like I talked about before, everyone has a different gospel they like to preach. That's a gospel that really hit hard of me, is, like, you're either a child of God or you're the child of the devil. Like, you can't live both. But anyway, I think that's what sets a child of God and a child of the devil apart, is, like, when you're going through those tough times, when you're stressed and you're overwhelmed and you're angry of, like, why am I back to this emotional state? Instead of turning to sad country music, which is what I used to listen to, I keep the worship music on, I keep praying, and I keep reading, and I know that with time it will heal and it will get better, because it's so easy at times when I'm going through that stuff and I'm riding in my truck, and I can so easily just turn on some music that's going to make me feel okay in my thoughts of, like, oh, you know, this person's going through it too on the song. Bull crap, man. Everyone's going through something. Yeah. That's how you deal with it that's going to set you apart. You can either sulk and you can either sit in it, or you can keep on moving, and that's all it is, man. It's a steady walk. That's what this faith is. It's a steady walk. You just got to keep moving, stay disciplined, stay consistent, and like you said, man, trusting in Him, and it will work itself out. So I think that's I feel like a lot of people, when they get in dark valleys, they're like, man, you know, this sucks. Like, why is God doing this to me? God ain't doing it to you, man. To be honest, you're probably doing it to yourself. If you turn to God, God can pull you out of that, and it's a time that will strengthen you, and it's a time for growth. That's what the baptism stuff. Like, I just got baptized very recently, and I'll be honest, I'm not a very good person with, like, congrats, like, with not praise, but like, you know, good job, like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I don't do good with that. You can ask my parents. They don't know why. I don't know why. It's just how I am. And it's like, people would come up to me and they're like, man, you know, I'm so proud for you. I'm like, it's just a wedding ring. Like, you're not going to get married to someone unless you've been dating for a while. I would hope so. You know, all this is a wedding ring. It's showing other people that, hey, I've had this relationship with this amazing God, and now it's time to show everyone. And the thing that I think that, and I even told Spencer this behind the scenes, I was like, because he was asking, he's like, you ready? And I'm like, I'm nervous. Like, I don't want to give the wrong image to people. Because, you know, you go to these camps, you get this camp high, and you're like, you know, you're up on this peak with God. Yeah. And then you come home, and it goes a little slow, but then, you know, at camp, you're like, I want to get baptized. So then you get baptized, and it's back up on this peak. Everyone's cheering for you. They're like, oh, like dabbing you up when you get back downstairs. They're saying, good job, man. And you're riding this peak at the entire start of your journey with God. And then, like everyone knows, that valley's coming. And when that valley comes, those people aren't ready for it. And that's why we see such high numbers of people getting saved and getting baptized and then going back to their old ways. Because that valley hits, and they aren't used to it. They don't know how to deal with it. And that's why I wish churches would teach that more. Like, it's great. You know, we're going to be doing this high school revival. You know, we did a high school revival for the first time last year. I believe you were there.
Yes, I was.
FCA. It was through FCA, but it was for all high schools. And we're going to try to keep that going. But, like, it would be so easy to get up on that stage and, you know, have a little baptism, like, inflatable thing over here and be like, you know, I want 10, 15 people in this room. Like, I just feel in my heart 10 or 15 people are going to get saved tonight and they're going to get baptized. It could be easy to go up there and give some powerful sermon, but that's just not me, man. I told you before this, I'm a blunt and straightforward person. I'm going to get up on that stage, I'm going to tell you, this ain't an easy walk. When your head goes under that water and it comes back up, there are valleys to come and there are low spots that you're going to deal with, and I think that needs to be taught more because we got an outbreak. I mean, Gen Z, there's an outbreak of revival right now, but I'm concerned that outbreak is dying off, that people are going to die off that faith when they realize what it really is. It's not unicorns and rainbows. And that's what I have felt inclined as my gospel to spread to people. Like how I talk to you, everyone has a different gospel spread. That's the one that I feel inclined to tell people. Because life is hard. Life is not fair. If it was fair, we'd be hung up on that cross. And that's just part of it, man. I wish people would teach that more. And that's why baptism is such a beautiful and special thing. But that's just the start. That's just the wedding ring.
Yeah, and talking about just a wedding ring, kind of, you only marry people that you've dated or had a relationship with for a while. And, it's kind of, with me, I had been going to faith for a while, and this kind of goes back to my testimony before the stuff on the bus happened, but they were doing baptisms. And me and my sister got baptized, and people were kind of pushing that I would. I didn't understand the gospel yet. So I got baptized. And lo and behold, literally like 3 months after that, I end up getting in trouble at school, going to alternative school. So it's kind of the idea. And I wasn't even saved yet. I wasn't even in the relationship. And I got baptized. Now, I still look back to that baptism, and although I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know the importance of it, I still thank God, though, for his grace, that in a sense he sort of fulfilled that baptism and brought me to the faith. So, that is something like with camp. A lot of people are so quick to get baptized after being on that camp high, and then once they get off of that and they get down in the valley, life hits them like a truck. I think the big thing, though, is a lot of these camps aren't being blunt enough. They're trying to sugarcoat. They're trying to give people a false picture of Christianity, which, yes.
Don't get me wrong, I love that paintball, though.
Yes, yes. Which, is fine. Having games is fine, but when the preachers are kind of trying to code it up to look all sweet all the time and look like it's going to be easy, I think that's why you see a lot of people getting off that camp high and quickly going back down and really not coming back up until camp comes back around.
And that's why, I say I got saved March of 2024, but mine was very, slow. Kind of how yours was, slow and steady. That's how mine was. And, camp is in June. First Baptist, the Camp of Coe is in June. And I went to that camp, man, and this was the first camp I had been to after I had a realization. After I was finally starting this journey. And, man, I was early into it. In no way was I living it out right or good. I was learning a lot. And I went to this camp, man, and I had this camp high, and one night at worship, they were like, if you want to take those next steps, walk to a leader in the back. And I walked to a leader in the back. I will say his name, Barrett Willingham. I do want to have him on this show at some point because I love that guy. But he took me outside, and, we chatted about it, and I kind of told him, what had happened, what led to me being saved. And, he gave me this card to fill out. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm not getting baptized. But I wanted to at least let him know, hey, this journey has started. Because he was a big, when I was younger, it was a couple of years ago. He would do Bible study stuff with us, with a group of guys. And so, I got to know him pretty well. He got to know me decently well. So being able to talk to him about what I was going through and what I had been through just felt like a weight off of my shoulders. So we went back home, and I told myself, I'm not getting baptized again. I told myself, I see it happen too much with people getting baptized and then going back to living the old way. And I was like, I don't want to risk that, I don't want to get baptized and then risk going back to living the old way. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a year. It's I'm going to see if I can live this out for a year, and then I'll think about getting baptized. And, March 2025 came around, and then camp came, and then we left from camp. That camp high kind of wore down a little bit, and I went up to Spencer, and I was like, I told him, a very short version of the story. I was like, it's time. Like, I want to get baptized. And he's like, well, would you be willing to wait till like August 10th? And I looked at him, I was like, I have waited more than a year. I can wait an extra month. I was like, I want to get baptized. And man, it was stressful. Even after I got baptized too, I was like, man, that wedding ring's on now. It's real. Like, there ain't no going to school acting like a buffoon, treating people like crap without love. And thankfully, I had trained myself up to a year. I'm not perfect. Like how I asked you, one of the sins that you struggle with the most, the one for me was probably judgment. Of like not saying it out loud, but thinking it. And that was something that was so hard for me to get through. Like the physical stuff, I was able to get over that and to flee from that pretty easily, like cussing, man. And I say this, and I gotta be careful how I say it, but like honestly, I think cussing should be one of the easiest things that you can give up. It's your tongue.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
how you talk, man.
Yeah.
And it's like so many people I see out here, every other word's a cuss word. And it's like, man, like, why? It's like, what does that say about you? It doesn't make you mature. And I think the only time I've seen a valid use of a cuss word is like if someone's trying to get a point across and no one's listening and they're like emphasizing it to you. Maybe, yeah. But you got these kids out here in high school, every other sentence they're saying it, and it's like, dude, that's...
Well, and I mean, it makes you look uneducated.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it makes you look like your vocabulary is just the F word and the B word.
Yeah, it's the same way with drinking. Like, it's not a sin to drink, it's a sin to get drunk. Yeah. That's what I've told my friends. I was like, they'll get in arguments with me about, like, oh, when we're at the beach, like, oh, why don't you drink? And I was like, and they're like, oh, why don't you drink? It's not a sin if you don't get drunk. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But how fair is it for me to go to the beach here and, like, drink just one twisted tea? And then for me to go the next morning and tell y'all about God, you're like, hey, man, you shouldn't be doing that with this girl. Like, how right is that of me? And it's the same way of, like, doing things with girls at the beach. Like, it doesn't matter if I do something and I don't go past that boundary, of, like, the sexual boundary. Let's use it as it is. I don't go past that boundary and, you make out. How does that portray yourself to your friends? Like, if you're going to go share the gospel to them and they know what you did, they know you made out with them. Like, it all comes back to, it may not be a sin, but it also says in the Bible to portray yourself, to be a light. So if you're going out and doing those things, cussing, drinking, partying all the time, ask yourself, are you really portraying the light of God and of Jesus to others?
Yeah, and I mean, it really, when you're doing that and other people see you doing that and they hear what you preach, but what you preach don't line up with what you act like, a lot of people start calling you hypocrite. Now, I mean, I've struggled with that. I'm sure you've struggled with that. I'm sure everybody who preaches one way and then can end up acting another way. But, and, you bring up, though, that, drinking is not a sin, right? Jesus drank. Jesus had alcohol. Their wine had alcohol in it. But Romans 13, though, you still have to submit to the government, right? If the government has said you can't drink until you're 21, or you can't have tobacco until, I think, 21 now.
I think, it's 21 now.
Yeah, so if the government says that, and it is not in opposition to God's word, you have to obey that. Now, if it was something like you can't preach the gospel, and it's something like that is blatantly evil and terrible, you don't have to obey that. The early Christians didn't, and thank God that the early Christians did not just say, oh, well, yep.
Honestly, man, I'm afraid with how our world is now with the government that people would fall. I mean, think about it. We fought the British and killed thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people because of like a 3 or 4% tax. And now we get taxed like 40%. So people are starting to become more reliant on the government. And I am genuine. And I think, I always say this. Ooh, I just had a big old like gulp. I always say this, but it's like if the government said like came out with a law like that, I think that would be a true test of faith. I think that would be trial by fire. I mean, it would weed out some people. Same way as someone walks into it, and I can sit here and say it all day. I don't know how I'm going to react. Someone walks through those doors right there with a gun and like points it at your head. And it's like, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in God? Like, yeah, I can sit here and say, like, oh, yeah, I'll get on my knees and say, yeah, or, I'll fight for the gun. But it's like, when you're really in that situation, how are you going to react?
Yeah, and, when you're in those situations, you think of people like St. Stephen, the first early church martyr that's recorded in Acts. And, whenever you're in those situations, now I hope nobody is ever in any of those situations where, hypothetical scenario, someone walks through those doors, is like, deny your faith or else you're going to die. St. Stephen, when he was in an argument with the Pharisees, and they were like, hey, deny Christ, or else we're going to stone you. We're going to kill you. St. Stephen didn't rely on his own strength. He relied on God's strength to get him through that, and he remained faithful through it. He did not end up denying Christ. He kept preaching Christ, and they ended up killing him. And, a lot of people see martyrdom as a bad thing. Now, seeking out martyrdom, I would say, is bad. If you're kind of having the idea of, hey, I want
to prove I'm a big dog.
Yeah, if you're having that idea, like, I want people to remember me, or I want to just be martyred. That's not something that you should seek out. But what I will say, though, is you should seek out that kind of faith, though. You should seek out the kind of faith that if you were given that you would be willing to go to the grave for it. So, but like he's saying, we can talk about that all day, where, hey, if someone walks through, we both have, we could say we both have the faith to say, oh, I'm not denying Christ, and end up dying. Well, I mean, in reality, if we're not relying on God to speak for us and to get us through that, we're going to deny Christ.
I think that's where the peace and comfort of knowing, like, 100%, like, I know where I'm going after I die, is like think like Vikings. Man, they were some brutal fighters, and it was because they were brainwashed to an extent that as soon as they die, they're going to Valhalla, like a paradise place. So they were all seeking death. So it's the same thing. Like, someone walks to that room, and it's like I know where I'm going, and to an extent, I'm proud of what I've done on this world. And I think if you ask yourself that question of, like, am I proud of what I've done so far on this world, and the answer to that is no, then that's a time to reflect and really change some things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I want to do this with every guest. Closer to the end of the podcast, I just want to ask you, is there anything that you wished I would have asked you, or anything that you want to dive deeper into, a question or something? Because I don't want to end the podcast off and there was something you wanted to talk about and you didn't get to talk about it.
I'm not too sure. I think we really covered most things. We went through the testimony some stuff on baptism, some stuff that I regretted about my baptism, stuff that happened in school that, I really do praise and thank God for that, because, as I said, I don't know where I'd be at. I don't know who my friends would be during this time if that never happened. I don't know my relationship with my parents or my grandparents or even, my extended family would be if I didn't end up changing. So that is definitely something that I look back on. It's like baptism. I look back on baptism. I thank God for his faithfulness through that, even though I didn't understand what baptism meant. I didn't understand what being a Christian meant. I wasn't even Christian. So I look back, though, and I see God's faithfulness through that. But yeah, I really think that you hit on everything. If you have anything else that, you just think would be good to ask, I'll definitely be here to answer it. But
I did want to make one point. I think that at the time of this podcast being filmed, like, man, this was so close to not happening. I had kind of forgotten about it. But thankfully I told Henry about it, and he held me accountable like a couple weeks ago, like maybe a month and a half ago. And I was like, dang, man, like, you're right. I need to take the steps towards it. But I think that the timing of this being filmed, and it'll hopefully be released here within a week and a half, with school starting, school is a spiritual war zone, man. It is a war zone, and heck, at lunch, man, you sit, like, the table right behind me, and so you hear all of it, man. The way they're talking, what they're talking about, and it's like you're going to be surrounded by that almost every day at school, no matter how strong your faith is, no matter what school you go to, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of teenagers, and that's just how they're going to act. And that's where strength and obedience and not being conformed to your surroundings, your morals, being solid in your morals.
Yes.
And that's why I'm so excited about this episode and being able to talk to you, because, man, this podcast almost didn't happen. There was so much stuff behind the scenes that almost made this didn't happen. So, like I said, very blessed that First Baptist has given us this space. Very blessed that God has given me the gift with the cameras and the platform. Very blessed to have people in our community that I can do these interviews with and speak with that are just full of wisdom and love and knowledge, and that have testimonies that can speak to people and that can start conversations. Like that is the whole point of this podcast, is that I want to show people that conversations can be started and seeds can be planted just through a testimony, even if it's a simple one of I grew up in church, and then, I got 15 years old and my parents told me I needed to really get serious about it, and I got serious about it. Like, man, that can start conversations right there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, man, how was it growing up before then? How is it now that you're in your faith?
Yeah.
Like, there's conversations that can be started. And, man, I think this was an amazing first episode, and I'm so excited to get this out there, especially get some clips out on the TikToks. And one question, very short one here, because we got to wrap it up pretty soon, but your TikTok account name, Gospel of Yeshua, if I'm pronouncing that right. What made you what made you make that your name, Gospel of Yeshua?
So I guess really the main reason is, the gospel, the good news. So that is Jesus's Hebrew name. So just sort of, it's unique. And, sort of the main idea there was I want most of my posts, if not all, unfortunately not all of them are, dedicated directly or indirectly to the gospel, but I wanted most of my posts indirectly or directly directed towards the gospel of Jesus Christ. Yes. So, that's why I chose that name, though. I do love the gospel. It's so wonderful. I mean, it is. We don't deserve it at all. We said earlier, we deserve that. We deserve death. We deserve what Christ got. So that's why I picked it, though. I don't know if I probably have some weird words in my bio, like Latin or something, but if I do, that's like some church historical stuff. I don't know, but I like the history stuff behind it. I don't know. I just like history.
Man, I'm a history buff too, especially U.S. history. Wars.
Oh,
yes. I guess it goes back to that boy testosterone. I love wars.
Yes.
Just hearing all about them. The Crusades too.
Oh yeah, Crusades.
Yeah, man. But I am so excited that we got to finally get here and film this. Scheduling can be one of the hardest things. So I'm glad that you took the time out of your day to come here at 5 o'clock, prime dinner time, to come and film an episode with me and for the show. And there's no telling where this is going to lead. I hope and pray that this show can reach people, and that we can continue to bring guests on here and speak to people. Some of the guests will be older people with wisdom, because obviously we are kids still, and there are some things that we don't 100% know. I'd motivate y'all, if there's something we talked about on this podcast that we botched, please comment, please let us know. I'm open to criticism, constructive criticism. I will read the Bible and double check just to make sure, but if there's anything you spotted, please let me know. Please let me know down below. We're going to try to get this. It's going to for sure be on YouTube. We're going to have clips on social medias, Instagram, TikToks. We are possibly going to get it on Spotify. We got to work some things out there, but basically just trying to get this to as many people as we can. And I hope that this can be a big impact on the local community too. We are at First Baptist Church Trustful, I've grown up in this town pretty much my entire life. I believe you did too.
Yes, sir.
So this is a
Entire life.
hometown turf. I mean, home war zone. We were in a civil war every single day. So I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm so excited. This is going to be awesome. And we're going to grab a picture after too.